Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatuhu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you as always from Sharjah TV. And as always, I'm your host, Ismail Bullock. Today we want to talk about a topic that is quite prevalent, where people get, well, we can't even say facts. They get information and they take this information based upon some maybe individual accounts or some unconfirmed cases or situations, whatever it may be, and then they spread this news via social media, or they take certain stances and then try to promote their personal stance to the general masses. So we're going to discuss today the danger in doing so, and how does Islam view this kind of practice. To do this with me is no stranger to the show, Brother Almir. Assalamu alaikum. So this is something we see. Obviously, we're going to talk about some certain things related to certain situations that we see today, but we see this especially in the, since the advent of social media. People, we see some really crazy, generally speaking, videos or pictures of something that's got, something that happened like 15 years ago, and then they'll take that video, and it's actually quite sad that there's someone initially who has done that video purposely knowing that it's completely fake. That's the really sad thing. And then they'll take that and say, this video is of this disaster, or of this massacre, or of this whatever it is, when it's actually a video of for example, a fire that happened 10 years ago, but they'll say it's related. And it spreads, and so many things. It's not,
Well, Jazakallah khair for inviting me to the show again. When you say social media, what's funny, it's, how about this? Forget social media. How about, what was the first instance of social media? We have the emails. Remember all those forwards? 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where you get so many people like, if you forward this to 10 people, you'll get this and that, and all unverifiable facts, all the things, and this just was enlarged with the advent of the social media, and it's become so widespread right now that regardless of which platform is out there, it's being spread. One of the experts on this, he goes, without mentioning the name of the social media, he goes, this particular social media is like a petri dish of false information. It's like it's like a crock pot of all these false ideas and news and false facts. People like to call it. They're not facts, but it cannot be a fact and false. Either it's a fact or it's not a fact. Yeah. It is false, right? Or it's fake, and it's not as we've had, like you said, you mentioned the massacres, you mentioned the floods, you mentioned the natural events, right? And you've seen those emerge as fake things around them, but nothing has been as devastating as this pandemic.
Yes.
And it's been ongoing now for almost, we could say, in a few months it'll be 2 years. And the more it goes on, and the more you see of these things. And what's the unfortunate part in all of this is that Muslims have participated in it as well, either knowingly, unknowingly, or sometimes even willfully, which is concerning. And that's hopefully the purpose of today's talk, because we need to see what the prophetic tradition says. When the Prophet ﷺ, what he used to say. For example, so think about it this way. In reality, in Islam, we know that Islam promotes optimism versus pessimism, correct? And this is Prophet ﷺ in many examples in his life showed it to us, and he told us. Yet a lot of Muslims, for some reason, with this pandemic, are promoting pessimism. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. The pandemic, we haven't seen it in a century. But, we have to go back to the Sunnah and see what the Prophet ﷺ did in situations. One of the things is, that throughout these things harm people. This is not something like, you get together with a bunch of friends, in a coffee shop, and you're joking around, and one of the friends you pick out, and you try to pick on him, and then it's just a joke, and everybody's there like, oh, you know what, no big deal, we're just joking. I mean, these things are harming people. These things can kill people, right? So this is not something that should be taken lightly. And this is not one of the things that Islam describes the individual as. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said that the believer has a nature with a multitude of dispositions, and lying and being traitorous is not among them. Right away we know that being, lying and being treacherous and traitorous, to others, to the society, it's not among them. It's not the quality of a Muslim. So lying has always been an evil within intellectual history of mankind. And it's been pasted and carved in such a way that it presents itself as something that could be true, but it definitely is not, right?
And I mean, if you think about it as well, when these people, they take these facts without taking them from valid sources or sources that can be verified, they are sharing in the lie, whether they realize or not. They themselves are taking part in this lie by sharing this unverified news.
Of course, yeah. And in the Islamic tradition, lying or kadhib is described as it's an evil composed of empty speech, right? For it communicates a conviction without any traditions or truthfulness, and possibly causes harm. So to mention any form of lying makes one responsible and is devoid of usefulness and is just a frivolous behavior. And it's severely, some of the things in Islamic tradition, some of the punishment, some of the condemnation happens against, lying. For example, false testifying, that's lying in itself. Testifying against, accusing somebody of something that it's, a sin or dangerous act, and falsely testifying to that. Even though, if you think about it, a person is only uttering words. He or she hasn't done the physical harm, you could say, attack somebody with an axe or something like that. No, this is more like, words. But subhanAllah, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these things are huge. As much as an impact as, the real harm.
And a lot of the time, like you said, they may not have done physical harm, but them spreading this news so many times adds or can end up in people taking certain actions or doing certain physical things to other people based upon facts that were shared that weren't even true. So it can rouse up in people sometimes these bad behaviors. So indirectly they do end up doing something that,
For sure, because people, a person who's you could say, fake spreader or spreader of fake things or false things, maybe he's sitting in the basement, just like out of the fun, he's just doing it. Meanwhile, somebody out there and far away takes this so seriously and acts upon it. And this happened before. Let me give you what one of the Islamic scholars, he said, analyzing the situation, for example, prophethood, right? He said, if truthfulness, sidq, was not the foundation of prophethood, subhanallah, then revelation and the sharia would become void. He says, so similarly, truthfulness is the foundation of civilization. No society can uplift itself without humans being truthful to one another. And even the Prophet ﷺ, we know, before he's given revelation wahy by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was called, what was his nickname? He was the Amin. He was the one who always spoke the truth. People who rejected him as a prophet, we know that they always said, but he always spoke the truth. That was one of the things they would give him, And even the Prophet ﷺ, when he would invite people to Islam, and they were not Muslim at that time, he would say, but that person from that tribe, he's known to be a truthful person. So truth was valued, and not only among Muslims in Islam, it was valued by other people, So even the people that were best before Islam, accepting Islam, they became the best, of the best behaviors of all these things. And I think this should not be taken so lightly in our times, because we have to be out there and comprehending all of these things in order for us to make the best judgment. Because, which we're going to be talking about in the show today, is that we act as platforms as well, because we're spreading these things. And this is where it comes. We may not be, forming these things, making these things up, putting text together, all these memes, pictures, whatever it is. We're not doing these things, but just by sharing it or pushing forward without verifying, It's a huge problem. So let's talk about two things. There's something called misinformation, and there's something called disinformation. So what's the difference? So the basic definition of misinformation is basically the wrong information, right? Whereas disinformation is the false information spread in order to deceive people. So of course, one is worse than the other, correct? So disinformation is just pretty much making stuff up, right? And then spreading it. And misinformation is just like, maybe it did not come to that person, maybe it just misinformed, maybe it did not receive enough information to form an opinion.
You know what's actually sad is I've seen people, it's one, like you said, there's one thing where people share old videos of certain events or disasters that happened, and then they say this is, that they make it assume, people assume that this is the video of a recent disaster, for example. But I've actually seen videos where people have taken a lot of time to create a video that looks like and that is taken from an actual news broadcast or TV station, and they've put the title, and to the layman who's not that skilled, it looks like this is actually a clip of a reputable news broadcast, and it's completely completely fake. I remember recently reading something to do with the pandemic, and it was showing like some planes landing, and then it had some headlines. So the person who's not really up to key would have thought that's, and it said something like, airlines stop vaccinating pilots because pilots start dying from the vaccine. And it looked really real. And it's, it looked like it was real. And I said to myself, look how much, who is the person, unfortunately, the sad person, as in that they spent their time to design this video. Because it's not something you would do in like a couple of seconds. It would maybe take them maybe hours to put this together to make it look like for what purpose? Just like you said, either, it's not even misinformation, it's disinformation, because they know deep down that when they put this video together, they didn't take those facts from anywhere, they purposely put them together.
I'll give you an example. We teach our children, I've got teenagers, right? So one of the things we teach them is how to digest information, how to comprehend things. So comprehension, as in English language, you take a comprehension course where like you take a text, you read it, and then you kind of say it in your words what you've understood from it. So this is how the information should be also contextualized. So, for example, somebody sees something on the news that is true, right? And it could be construed in a different way with the understanding of the people. So in this case, people can have misinformation. For example, somebody will read an article and read one paragraph, but not finish the whole article. You will get maybe a different message from that article than the person who reads the whole thing. Because in the article they talk about two sides. They say, look, there is this and there is that, and well, let's, reconcile between the two. But the person will take a message. So we have to be also fair to ourselves, and we have to teach our children in order how to digest this. And this is where misinformation can come. Misinformation can be, in my opinion, easily cured, easily dealt with, but disinformation is the one that harms. The one you're mentioning is a person making these things on purpose.
I'm just going to hold you there because it's time for us to go for a break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. So just before the break, we touched upon something that I've noticed, only recently, and unfortunately, it wasn't just the fact that the information that was being put on this public arena by a person who has you could say maybe not in the bigger picture, no, not hundreds of thousands of followers, but has maybe 20, 30,000 followers, and is looked up to in these, by some in the Islamic world. Whatever the case, they have a platform, they have followers. That they came out, and it was shocking. One, it was shocking for people who are educated, or people who have some kind of, usually they would have some kind of what you would say, being sensible. Plus, this person also has Islamic knowledge. So what was really sad is I stumbled across this video, and they were basically saying that someone they knew who was also, a well-known Islamic preacher, they didn't mention the name, and they said, oh, this person, he took the vaccine and he almost died. And he's talking about, and then he talks about, and then then he got better, and then a few days later, he's on a live Zoom with us, and he collapses in front of us on the Zoom, and they rush him to hospital again, and okay, so he based this. So then, instead of saying maybe this person had an allergic reaction, just like somebody could be allergic to wasp stings, but they've never been stung by a wasp, maybe. And when they do get stung by a wasp, they have an allergic reaction, and we know allergic reactions can be worse than what he was describing. They can literally puff up, and their windpipe, those allergies. The guy has a certain nut that he didn't have. He went to a different country, they gave him, I don't know, hazelnut. He always used to have peanuts. He gets So instead of the person taking it like this, what was really sad is that they turned this into a whole supposed proof, and this is proof, and this is evidence. Look at these vaccinations, and look, based upon, what about the millions of people who have taken them? So that was really sad. And the problem is people, like we mentioned earlier, you may not be the one who started the lie, but by you spreading it, yes. So you may not be the person who started the conspiracy theory of vaccination, but you on a public arena, you need to be very, very careful, and you need to know for sure that what you're saying,
look,
is correct before you spread that to the public.
Put it this way, let's just analyze the situation quickly, and let's say that this person did have allergic reaction to the vaccine. Okay, then what? From this, there was a really loaded statement made where it says vaccine is a poison. Whoa, that is huge. Now, we know that there are side effects to certain vaccines, but this is called anecdotal evidence. In science, we call it anecdotal evidence. In any life, anecdotal evidence. Somebody in the world right now, lightning strikes him. He dies from it. Is it going to affect me or you? Are we getting lightning strikes here? Now, somebody who dies with lightning strikes, you say, don't go out at all because lightning might strike you. This is one case out of 10 million or million.
An example that we were just talking about before we started recording is, that I would like to bring up, because it's a very good example. You mentioned about women who take birth control, that there is a percentage of them, and it's actually, you remember you saying 6 times greater risk of things like blood clots. Yes. And you even mentioned that every year you see patients, women who come in with blood clots because they were regularly taking birth control. But still, if you look at the bigger number, and we can't compare birth control to vaccine because you don't have to take birth control. There's no doctors going out there recommending to the whole of the world to take birth control. But just to put it in perspective, even though there are cases like that, you said you see a few every year in just your hospital, but still, if you look at that percentage, and that's quite a lot if you think about it.
6 times more.
Yeah, if you see a few cases every year in your hospital from birth control where they've had a blood clot and it's gone to, it's in their body and they have to have emergency, maybe some pass away, some have emergency surgery. But if you look at that, it's still probably, I would imagine, 2 or 3% of the population in the world who take birth control. Yeah. It's probably not much more than that.
No, but think about it in a different perspective. Birth control is something voluntary people take.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a high risk, and people don't complain about that. Vaccine is like saving lives. The virus is like cooking around, spreading around, transmitting from people to people. We just talked about before the show. We found another one of our people that we know is hospitalized, and he's our age due to this COVID. So what does that mean? That means that you can't make empty, or you could say, huge statements like this out of one person. SubhanAllah, it's just what happened. But, it is what it is. And to go out there and say the vaccine is a poison, it's really, really a strong statement. Look, what happens to me in the hospital, I see people, at the end of the day, I still tell you, look, what I've seen still is anecdotal evidence. We have to take this one case, for example, and we have to see all the cases in all hospitals of the world and then gather the information and see the percentages. This is how information is.
It's also, it's also very irresponsible, because
Very irresponsible.
because now there could be people who have who are caring for elderly parents, who may be really old now and they don't have all their faculties, So this person makes decisions on their behalf. He turns on this person. He respects this person. He says, "Oh, this person's a knowledgeable Islamic person." The person's already himself got a bit of doubt. He's a bit of, he's been into conspiracy theories. He sees this person, "Oh, such and such. I have great respect for him. He's a very good guy. His videos are so usually, I find them really educational or very moving." He decides now, "I'm not going to vaccinate myself. I'm not going to vaccinate my parents, my children," and then he gets sick. And we've seen many people like this.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen people who are the strongest they were anti-COVID and it's a hoax. And then when they got, recently just one guy in America died. He was a big anti-COVID, he was saying it's a hoax. Just died a few days ago after he got it. He died. So we see people, so this person then doesn't take it. He catches COVID. He passes on to his elderly parents. They die. Just recently, I've heard so many cases recently around the world where people we know, that one of our female colleagues only recently, her mother died. A few days later, her father died. Now, I didn't ask him, is it COVID related? But you can kind of guess.
Yes.
So close amongst each other that all of a sudden they're sick. This one dies. 2 or 3 days later, all of a sudden they're sick. So of COVID, right? So people now, when they make such statements that this person didn't get vaccinated, he got it, passed it on to his elderly parents, they died. Ultimately, this person bears some responsibility because they're literally making a.
For our viewers, let's just say that look, brothers and sisters, vaccines are not 100% effective, from severe disease and sickness and death, but definitely they're in 90s, right? So your chance of surviving this is much higher than not being vaccinated. Let's just make that clear. We're not saying, "Oh, you know what, you get vaccinated, you're out of the woods." No. But what we're saying is this. Let's take another example. There was a controversial radio talk show host back in North America, right? We mentioned that this Islamic preacher, he's got 20, 30,000 followers, right? This person has millions. What happened to this guy? He ended up having COVID, but he was anti-COVID hoax, like you said, against the vaccine. He propagated on his channel. He used to make fun of the vaccines. He gets COVID, he's in a hospital, in a critical situation. He releases a video to his, followers on social media. Of course, the radio station that he's working at, they said, "Look, he's hospitalized, he's off the shore now, he cannot come." And they said, because of COVID. Then he says to his followers, "Please, COVID is real. Take the vaccines. Don't," he's kind of repenting in a way, right? Well, guess what happened? A lot of his followers are upset with him now. "How come you're changing your opinion?" Others are like, "We listened to you, we didn't get vaccinated, my parents died." So now, of course, he pulled the statement back, and now he's telling us, and you know what? When he said that statement, subhanAllah, the next day, next 2 days, people got vaccinated. The power of somebody following you and listening to you. But a lot of people have died because of this.
And what was also sad in this particular situation that I saw was within the same comments, another well-known Islamic speaker who has twice the following in the 70,000s, 80,000s, also came and put, "Yes, well done, it's our body, our choice." Of course it's your choice, but then make it your choice. There's a difference between my body, my choice, and I'll make videos and try to push to the public my opinion. You don't want to get vaccinated. You have some wacky ideas. Keep it to yourself.
What makes me sad is the same individuals, if they want to travel to Africa or some other tropical countries, there are certain diseases there that you have to get a vaccine against. And they said, if you want to go travel to this place, you need to take this vaccine for this particular, only that localized disease, right? Well, guess what? They do it. Where's your principle about your body, your choice? Yet you want to travel there, it's okay, I'll take the vaccine, just because, you know what, I want to go. And subhanAllah, this is what bothers me the most, is that the double standards that we're using. So just let me mention something to you. The untruth and lies should be against the nature of believer, but Muslims in this case are both victims and perpetrators when it comes to misinformation. The amount of misinformation going around the Muslims is no different than that of non-Muslims. For example, now, what did the Prophet ﷺ say about this? And this is where the crux of the whole talk today is. The Prophet ﷺ said, it is enough falsehood for a person to relate everything that they hear. And if we apply this hadith, or that they even see, that in a different context, right? We could say that. If you just apply this hadith to this, it's enough for us to like, you know what, man? Before I press that forward button, or click on it, or tap it, or whatever, should I be doing this? How do I verify this? How do I make sure that this is not what it is? Maybe it's fake, maybe it's misleading. So much so that even the Prophet, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, O you who have believed, if there comes to you a disobedient one with information, investigate, lest you harm a people out of ignorance and become over what you have done regretful. And there was another last year, famous, you could say, this guy has millions of followers online. He brought one of the conspirators, who happens to be a Muslim, on his show, talking about COVID is hoax, this is too overblown, and like this. And by the way, in North America, one of these guys, this false guy who's spreading this, they call him one of the dirty dozen of social media. They say that 65% of all the fake news, all the false information relating to the pandemic is related to one of these guys, who happens to be a Muslim. Ya akhi, we are supposed to be men and women of truth and spreading truth, regardless of what it is, what kind of truth it is. Facts, yet happens to be one of the 12. And one of the Islamic da'is or preachers brought this guy to the show, and a bunch of Muslims out. We have examples in Europe where a person, subhanAllah, I was shocked to listen to this, where a person's like...
Let me just hold you on that point there, because you need a bit of time, and it's time for another break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Now, just before, you mentioned about a particular person, I think you said, in Europe, who'd made some statement.
Yeah, one of our Muslim community members, in Europe, he had his uncle die from COVID. His father was in ICU for a long time. And many members of his family were very sick. He's in his 40s. And, the media came to him and vaccines became available. And then they told him, look, what do you think about COVID? He said, oh, no, I know, it's real. Look what happened to my family. Okay, so we have prevention against COVID. And it's a vaccine. What do you think? Oh, no. And then he starts spewing, I would say spewing anti-vaccine stuff to this person. This is one of the podcasts, you could say, or media that was released. And I was shocked, brother. And he used but this particular da'i, this particular person he follows, and he's like, don't take this. And the effect that it can have on an individual who has very close tragedy to his heart, right? He knows his COVID is real. But the convincing part that he had taken part of in this anti-vaccine thing, it shocked me that a person was able to convince him so much with this, you could say fake things. And this is what's sad. And this is what's going on in our community. So these things can kill people. I mean, this is not something like, one of the central sayings of Islamic law and ethics as within medical community is to avoid and to remove harm, correct? This is the part of the community, of the society, of the jama'ah. You're talking about the whole country, for example, the whole nation, the whole world in this case. This pandemic is not affecting one particular place. It's affecting everyone all over the world. So we have to ask ourselves that, and we should understand that we do have a strong obligation to understand how we're informed correctly, and to avoid harm to others, and of course ourselves as well. So we need there's critical engagement of information. We need to be able to digest information in a proper way, and we need to be able to find out if something is proper or not. And me and you also being a part of the social media and some groups, and mashallah, we have brothers who come forward and ask, about certain things they've heard, or certain ailment, or certain, truth or not truth, whatever. And they will ask, either myself or you, like, brother, what do you think about this? Is this true or not? Can I share this? And, and they will say, look, brother, be careful, point the person in the right direction, this medical treatment, this, and so on. And this is the idea. If you cannot comprehend information yourself, or digest it, or you could say, separate information in its context, then ask of those who know. And this is our Islamic obligation as well. We're told that if you do not know, ask of those who do. And lastly, and this is what really it's upsetting me, that the same da'is, the Islamic preachers, they have more Islamic knowledge than I do. I'll be honest. They've studied Islam, they know Arabic language way more than I do. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, they're very good at what they do. And I asked those brothers to use the same principles that they use in Islam, in usul fiqh, in usul hadith. When they digest the hadith, or take one hadith and say, is this hadith, Hasan? Is it Sahih? Is it, verifiable? Is it fabricated? Is it weak? Is it da'if? Is it, why don't we apply the same science of this verification?
Checking
the news.
Checking the chain of narration.
Yes. Why are we not doing that, ya akhi? We know the famous story of Bukhari, rahmatullah alayhi, where he traveled from, I believe, was Iraq to Sham. And he heard about this person who's narrating the hadith. I don't know if it was Bukhari or was one of the famous six, you could say. Anyway, it's a verifiable story. And he would say, and he would come and he said, where is such and such? Because he heard of him narrating a hadith. And he wanted to collect it, and write it in his treatise and his collection, correct? And the person told him, oh, that's the person right there, points into that direction, the market or something like that. In the city, in the place. Then he saw this person calling the animal, because the animal was loose. He wanted to tie the animal. I think it either was a horse or a camel. I'm not sure. I think it was a horse. And he would pretend that he had something in his hand of food for this animal, like closed, and just maim the animal, come over. The animal comes, takes its by its rope, opens the hand. Of course, there was nothing in it. Ties the animal, but he kind of cheated the animal, you could say, by bringing him forward. Bukhari, or one of the, you could say, famous six of the Kutub Sitta, one of the collectors of hadith, saw this. And he said, if this person is dealing with an animal such a way, even though it's an animal, doesn't have, you could say, intellect, right? It's limited in its intellect, no? That he does this to an animal, how is this person going to be trusted with the hadith? So he didn't want to even listen to him. He said, no, this person, I cannot take him as a reliable narrator. So he left him. He never even spoke to him. So he left him, and we don't know who this person is. This is the amazing thing, You hear these things, but he did not expose them to say, oh, this person is vile, and this person is such a bad person, He didn't call him out by name. He just said, you know what? Leave him. Go away. Meanwhile, nowadays, like you said, we receive a video. Ooh, this looks spicy. This looks like, look what they're doing to the people. Making us all do the same, promoting vaccines, saying this. Oh, it's not, this pandemic is nothing. It's not a big deal. Not many people are dying. Ya akhi, sit down. And you, mashallah, are a person of intellect. You're a person who has a platform. And yet you share these things. And like you said earlier, why didn't you talk to the individual? Why didn't you say, look, brother, what happened exactly to you? Can we find out? Okay, even if it is a blood clot due to the vaccine, let's find out more. Wallahi, akhi, I've seen a non-Muslim who had a side effect of this blood clot for one of the vaccines. And you know what he said? Even if it came second time, choice of taking the vaccine or having a risk of this, he said, I still tell people take the vaccine. Because he says, I know that the COVID is real and it's more deadly. He said, I just happen to be one of those 12 out of a million. 12 out of a million. How many people have died from this? And how many people are going to die still from this out of the million? And how many, a fact is a fact, and I'll tell you this right now. We have so many patients, we call them post-COVID. You know how they're going home? Their lungs are damaged. They're going home on oxygen. They're limited, they're handicapped now. They're buying these little machines, they call them oxygen concentrator, where it like concentrates oxygen from the air. It's like a machine, it's like a compressor in a way. And it gives oxygen, pure oxygen to the nose or to the mask. And person has to live with it, Allahu Alam, maybe forever. But nobody talks about that this COVID has done that as well. Yeah, we have so many people that have passed away, but we have so many people that have damaged, that they're handicapped by this for a long time. So it's not something to joke about, to joke around with, and this is especially the time where we as Muslims should be the leaders in this regard. And we should be. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us, to be an example for others. So how can we be an example for others when we are doing all these other things that has actually nothing to do with, it's not in line with our Islamic teachings, right? So let's apply all of those things the way we applied in our Islamic sciences.
Well, you could say that the very most that they could say, if they really wanted to say that we're doing it for, what we feel is best, is if you're going to highlight that person, we don't know who that is, but the person who's happened to, mention to them that take care, watch out for some signs in case you're one of those people who have one of the rare people who have side effects. Educate them. So this brother, he noticed that he first got like this. So if you take any vaccine and you start to feel like this, go see a doctor. Something like this,
No,
but not like they're making it sound like it's standard.
This? In Islam, what do we accept? Ijma', consensus, correct? You will find fringe opinions in Islamic science traditions as well. Maybe that opinion is so weird as like just leave it. It's true. Same thing in the medical community. You'll find one doctor saying something like, and then the person says, but he's a doctor, he says this. Well, guess what? 1,000 others say otherwise. So in Islam, we take this. Let's go back to this pandemic particularly and talk about what the ulama says. And this is what's astounding to me. You have ulama from all over the world, all walks of life. We have here in UAE, we have here in Saudi and all these countries. You have from Africa, from Europe, from North America, from Australia. All the ulama have agreed that this pandemic is real. Take the vaccine because they've consulted the medical community. And yet, these brothers come out there and go against all of the ulama.
Not just that, on top of the ulama, they have, within all these Muslim countries and non-Muslim countries that have Muslim population, they have, like Islamic societies of doctors,
yes,
who are Muslims and doctors, and they're also saying the same thing. So are we going to now accuse, God forbid, A'udhu Billah, Allah forbid, we're going to accuse all of the scholars and all of the doctors and all of the various health organizations and everybody, even many of the Muslim, that they're all fooled. But you, the Mr. Social Media platform, you're the one who has the information because someone supposedly was it confirmed?
This is
got
you know what this
effects.
reminds me of? This is a dangerous path we're going on. It reminds me of those individuals, the crazy, dealing with calling other Muslims non-believer, and this is a disease, this Khawarij issue. Extremism. We know about this. We know a person who says, I'm praying in Haram in Mecca and I think I'm the only Muslim. Ya akhi. So this is, I don't want to compare the two, but there's a similarity in it.
It's a form of extremism.
There's a similarity where you're going down that path where you say, I'm the one who's correct and everybody else is wrong. Hold on right there. That should be a red flag for yourself. That, you're the one who's correct and everybody else is wrong. I don't think that's the case. So we have to go back and, verify the sources. We have to teach ourselves, teach others, and hopefully we are using this platform here today to educate or to inform the masses. Brothers and sisters, when you come across something, verify it before you share it. If you're not confirmed, if you're not sure, ask of those who know, because you yourself may be the vector of this false spread of information. There's not information, it's disinformation, is misinformation. I would say even disinformation, use a stronger term for that, because there's so much of it out there. You know, for example, even our maid in the house, you know what she said to me? I talked to my wife, let's speak to her, let's convince her to take the vaccine. She goes, oh, you know, I don't want to take the vaccine. I'm like, why? Yeah, you know, the people told me, and I've seen the videos. I see it, okay, where? She mentioned the social media, the two famous ones. I'm like, really? I'm like, you know, okay. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, when I renewed a visa last year, what was the thing you received in your arm? I said, I took you to the hospital, and there's a specific thing you received. She said, yeah, I remember. What was that? I'm like, that was a vaccine. You received a hepatitis booster shot, and you need 3 of them in 5 months. She's like, really? I'm like, you've received vaccines all your life, and you just received one last year, and you never questioned it? All of a sudden you questioned this? And I said, what you heard? Did you read an article? Did you come? She's like, no, I heard from the people in the social media. Then we explained to her, then we showed her, you know, and subhanAllah, she took the vaccine. And now she's fine. So sometimes we have to do this on an individual level, and hopefully this platform will help others to make that clear as well.
Sure. Jazakallah khair for sharing that. And thank you all for tuning in. And hopefully we can take away some benefits from that we need to verify our facts, take our information on whatever it may be from the verified platforms and sources, and not from individuals who may be acting upon personal experience or emotion. And until next time, inshallah, same time, same place, I leave you as always with the greetings of Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.